At Thanksgiving, my parents gave every grandchild dessert and cash envelopes except my son. My mother smiled and said, "He didn't earn it." When I left without a scene, my parents tried to take my house and report me as unstable. I responded once. "Hey Reddit, my parents always played favorites, and I learned early not to expect much from them. I built my own life, kept my head down, and thought that would be enough. Turns out it wasn't. Before it all blew up, here's how it started. My name's Sean. I'm in my late 30s and work in operations for a mid-sized company. It's steady work that pays the bills and stays at work. I live a quiet life with my son, Tucker. He's 9. I'm divorced. I own my place. No chaos there. The chaos is my family. My parents are Valerie and Jack. I have a sister, Sophie, and a brother, Peter. Peter's fine. We'll get to him later. Sophie is the problem. Or maybe she's the symptom. Depends how you look at it. From the outside, Sophie is the golden child. From the inside, she's barely keeping things together. Divorced, buried in debt, always between plans, always needing help. She lives close to our parents and leans on them constantly. Rent gaps, school expenses, emergencies that somehow come up every few months. Valerie and Jack cover it. They always have. And because they cover it, they feel entitled to manage everyone else too. I don't ask them for money. Haven't in years. That alone makes things tense. Thanksgiving this year was at my parents' house. Same setup as always. Tucker and I showed up early because he wanted to help. He'd spent most of the week making cranberry sauce from scratch, not canned. He looked up recipes, argued with me about sugar levels, took it way too seriously. He was proud of it. We walked in with the dish covered in foil, still warm. Tucker went straight to Valerie and told her he made it himself. She smiled, nodded, said, "That's nice," and set it on the counter. A little later, when people started moving around, it disappeared. I didn't see exactly what happened. I just noticed it wasn't there anymore. When dinner was served, there was a bowl of canned cranberry sauce on the table. Still had the ridges from the can. Tucker noticed. He didn't say anything. He just looked at me, then back at the table. I let it go. I always do. Sophie showed up late, like usual, with her kids charging ahead of her. Shoes on, jackets half off, yelling through the house. One of them clipped a small table near the entry and sent a framed photo sliding across the floor. The glass cracked. Valerie gasped. Sophie said, "Oh my God," without any real concern. Jack laughed and said, "Kids will be kids," then picked the frame up and leaned it against the wall. Tucker was on the couch with his handheld game, volume off, just keeping busy. Valerie noticed and snapped at him right away. Said he was being antisocial. Asked why he couldn't go play with his cousins. Told him it was rude to sit there like that when family was around. I pointed out he'd tried earlier and got brushed off. Valerie said that wasn't the point. The point was, he should try harder. Tucker turned the game off and put it in his bag without a word. Dinner prep continued. Sophie complained about traffic, about her ex, about how expensive everything was getting. Valerie hovered around her like a nurse. Jack kept checking his phone. Every so often, Sophie leaned in and whispered something to him. I couldn't hear it, but I saw Jack's face change each time. Tight, focused. At one point, Jack glanced at me. Not annoyed, not neutral, calculating. Like he was lining something up in his head. Tucker helped set napkins. Valerie corrected how he folded them. Sophie's kids ran through the kitchen again and knocked into a chair. No comment. Tucker reached for a spoon and Valerie told him to wash his hands again, even though he already had. Small stuff. It always is. When we finally sat down, Sophie's kids talked nonstop. Valerie praised them for eating their vegetables. Jack asked them about school. Tucker answered one question and got talked over. He didn't try again. I kept thinking about the cranberry sauce. The effort Tucker put into it. How quickly it disappeared. How easily it was replaced. Then I noticed Sophie whispering to Jack again. This time she looked stressed. Not performative stressed. Real. Jack nodded slowly. His jaw clenched. He looked at me, then back at her, then back at me. That's when it clicked. Sophie wasn't just being favored. She needed something. And whatever it was, my parents were already figuring out how to cover it. This wasn't just another awkward holiday. It wasn't about Tucker being quiet or me being distant. It was about money. And somehow I was part of the solution they were circling. I didn't know how yet. I just knew the tone had shifted. Thanksgiving had barely started, and I already wanted to leave. Dinner kept going like nothing was wrong. Sophie's kids filled the room with noise, arguing over seats, talking over each other, getting up and sitting back down. Valerie didn't stop them. She smiled and told Jack how energetic they were. One of them dropped food on the floor. Valerie waved it off. Another complained the stuffing was dry. Valerie offered to heat something else. Jack joked that they had strong opinions. Tucker stayed quiet. He ate what was on his plate and waited his turn when he wanted something. When he asked for the salt, Valerie told him to wait until everyone else was settled. He did. At some point, Jack asked Sophie's oldest how school was going. The kid shrugged and said it was boring. Valerie laughed and said school wasn't everything. A few minutes later, Tucker mentioned, very casually, that he made honor roll this quarter. He didn't brag. He didn't raise his voice. He just said it. Valerie looked at him and said, "Grades aren't everything, Tucker. Don't show off." That ended it. Tucker nodded once and went back to eating. I noticed a small stack of white envelopes on the counter near the kitchen. They weren't there earlier. Sophie noticed them too. Every time Valerie walked past them, Sophie's eyes followed. She wasn't subtle about it. Her kids didn't notice, but Sophie did. When dinner finally wrapped up, Valerie stood and announced dessert. Cheesecake. Tucker perked up a little. He'd been talking about it all week. Valerie makes it every year, and it's the one thing Tucker always asks for seconds of. Valerie brought out plates already sliced. She handed the first plate to Sophie's youngest. Big slice. Extra topping. The kid asked if there was more. Valerie said maybe. The second plate went to Sophie's other kid. Same size. Same smile. Jack reminded them to say thank you. They didn't. No one corrected them. Tucker stood up from his chair, holding his empty plate, and waited. He wasn't rushing. He was smiling, just standing there patiently. Valerie didn't look at him. She turned back to the counter and picked up the envelopes. She handed one to Sophie's youngest. The kid ripped it open immediately and pulled out cash. Held it up. Grinned. Sophie leaned forward slightly, watching. Another envelope went to the second kid. Same thing. Cash again. They compared amounts out loud. One complained the other got more. Valerie laughed and said it all evened out. Tucker was still standing there with his plate. Valerie finally looked at him and said, "You didn't earn dessert tonight." The room went quiet for a second. She added calmly, "After how you acted." Tucker didn't say anything. He didn't argue. He just lowered his plate a little. Then Valerie handed him an envelope. Tucker looked confused but still said thank you. He opened it carefully. Inside was a small folded piece of paper. He unfolded it and read it. I couldn't see all of it, but I caught enough words to understand what it was. Something about attitude. Something about learning gratitude. Something about being more present. Sophie's kids noticed right away. One of them laughed and said, "You didn't get anything." Valerie smiled. Not a big smile, a measured one. She said, "Maybe next time you'll be more present, Tucker." Then she turned back to Sophie's kids and asked if they wanted seconds. They did. She gave it to them. Tucker stood there for another second, holding the empty envelope and the note. Then he folded the paper back up and put it inside. His face went blank. Not angry, not sad, just flat. He whispered to me, "It's okay." That was it for me. I stood up. I took the envelope from Tucker's hands, tore it clean in half, and set it on the table next to the cheesecake. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't say anything dramatic. I helped Tucker into his coat. Valerie said my name like she wanted to stop me, but didn't know what to say. Jack stayed quiet. Sophie stared at the table. We walked out. Tucker didn't cry. He didn't ask why. He buckled himself into the car and looked out the window. I drove. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was Jack. "You made your mother cry," the text said. "Fix this by tomorrow or we talk about the mortgage." I didn't respond. I kept driving. The mortgage text was not a bluff. Jack had leverage and he knew it. Years ago, when I bought my house, Jack insisted on helping. Not a gift. Not a handshake loan. He set it up as a small second mortgage in his name, stacked under my main one. On paper, it looked tidy, responsible, like family backing family. In reality, it kept his name tied to my house and gave him a button he could press whenever he felt ignored. It came up every time I did not fall in line. Holidays. Boundaries. Anytime I said no. So when his message came in about talking about the mortgage, I already knew what he meant. He expected a call, an apology, some version of me backing down to smooth things over. I did not call. The next morning, I called my bank, because it was a recorded second mortgage and not just cash between us. Paying him off meant going through them, not through Jack. I already had enough saved to cover the note if I needed to. It would sting, but not ruin me. I spent the morning moving money, signing documents, answering questions. By early afternoon, Jack's loan was paid in full. Clean. Final. No favors. No strings. I sent him the confirmation receipt. One word. Done. No explanation. No follow-up. I didn't hear back. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. Paying off the loan meant pulling together every piece of paperwork tied to my finances. Statements, old emails, closing documents, anything with my name on it. I wanted nothing else hanging out there that could be used against me later. That is when I started digging through old email threads I had not opened in years. Buried in a chain from a long time ago was a message about the beach house. The beach house was supposed to be simple. Years back, Valerie and Jack bought it with help from all of us. That did not mean equal ownership. Peter kicked in some cash but did not want his name on the deed. Sophie did not put money in at all, but they told her the house was for the kids and that she would be taken care of from it someday. I put in a chunk up front, and, at the time, they added my name as a co-owner temporarily, just to make things easier with financing. They said they would clean it up later. They never did. I had not thought about it much since. I was not involved in managing it. I did not use it often. It was just there. The email thread mentioned a title update. Nothing dramatic, just enough to make me curious. The thread itself was months old, one of those vague back and forths about eventually cleaning up the title. At the time I saw it, I wrote it off as paperwork talk and forgot about it. I pulled the county records. It did not take long. There was a quitclaim deed filed recently. My name was removed. My signature was on it. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I did not understand what I was seeing, but because I did. The signature looked like mine at first glance. Same slant, same last name loop, but it was not mine. I knew every version of my signature. This was not one of them. They had not even told me. I checked the filing date. It was recent. After Thanksgiving. After the mortgage text. They had been sitting on the idea for a while, and after that holiday and that message, they finally pulled the trigger and pushed the deed through. I checked the status. Pending final processing. I downloaded everything. Screenshots, PDFs, metadata. I saved copies in 3 places. The reason clicked into place fast. Sophie. They were not trying to tidy paperwork. They were trying to free up an asset. The beach house was not sentimental to them. It was money sitting still. Money they could sell, borrow against, or rent out. Money Sophie needed. I replayed the moment from Thanksgiving in my head. Sophie whispering to Jack. The look he gave me afterward. The sudden urgency. The envelopes at dessert. The mortgage threat. They weren't reacting. They were planning. I didn't confront them. If I'd called right then, Jack would have lied. Valerie would have cried. Sophie would have played confused. They would have spun it into a misunderstanding and tried to pressure me into signing something to fix it. I kept pulling records. I checked past filings. I looked at the notary information attached to the deed. I noted the dates and locations. I didn't do anything dramatic. I just collected facts. They thought they'd already won that piece of the board. A few days passed. No messages about the beach house, no angry calls, nothing, which told me everything. They believed the quitclaim went through clean. They believed I either wouldn't notice or wouldn't fight it. Meanwhile, I acted normal. I went to work. I packed Tucker's lunches. I helped him with homework. I didn't mention the beach house to anyone. Not Peter, not my lawyer, not yet. What I did do was make sure nothing else could be pulled out from under me. I finished locking down accounts. I changed access on anything shared. I documented timelines. The mortgage was done. The house was safe. The beach house was different. That wasn't about protecting myself. That was about understanding what they were willing to do. They forged my name. They didn't ask. They didn't warn me. They didn't even try to justify it first. They went straight to removing me, all to cover for Sophie. I didn't feel angry in that moment. I felt clear. They crossed that line quietly, assuming I wouldn't push back. I let them keep believing that, for now. Things went quiet for a few days after I paid off the mortgage. No calls, no messages, no guilt texts from Valerie, no clipped instructions from Jack. That silence didn't feel like peace. It felt like they were deciding what to do next. They decided on a Tuesday. I was home that afternoon with Tucker. He was at the kitchen table working through math homework. I was making something to eat. Normal day. No raised voices. No tension. The knock on the door was firm and official. Not angry, not casual. When I opened it, there were 2 people standing there. A uniformed police officer and a woman who introduced herself as a social worker. They asked if I was Sean and if Tucker lived there. They told me they were there to do a welfare check. An anonymous report had come in expressing concern about my stability. The caller said I'd been drinking heavily, that Tucker was being neglected, and that the home environment might not be safe. I didn't argue. I stepped aside and let them in. The house was clean, not staged, just normal. Tucker's backpack by the door, Homework spread out on the table. Fridge stocked. No smell, no mess. They asked Tucker a few questions in front of me. Then a few alone. He answered honestly. About school, about dinner the night before, about his room. I could see him getting nervous. His voice got quieter. He kept glancing at me like he was checking if he was doing something wrong. The officer asked me if I'd been drinking. I said no. He asked if I owned any weapons. I told him what I had and where it was stored. The social worker took notes. They didn't stay long. The officer eventually said something like, "Everything looks fine here?" The social worker nodded and thanked me for my time. They gave me a card and a report number and said they would close it out. They left. The whole thing took maybe 20 minutes. It felt much longer to Tucker. Later that night, after Tucker went to bed, I called the non-emergency number on the card. I gave them the report number and asked for a copy for my records. A day later, I had the write-up in my inbox. It was not truly anonymous. The version they sent me listed the originating phone number at the top. I did not look closely at it right away. I just saved it with everything else. After they were gone, he sat at the table and stared at his math sheet. He didn't pick up his pencil. He asked if he did something wrong. I told him no. He asked if they were coming back. I told him no. He nodded, but he didn't look convinced. That was when it stopped being abstract for me. This wasn't pressure. This wasn't manipulation. This was an attack. I waited until Tucker went to his room and turned on the TV. Then I called my brother. Peter answered on the second ring. I told him what happened. He went quiet for a second and then said it was probably just Valerie being dramatic, that she was worried, that things had gotten heated, and maybe someone overreacted. I didn't argue. I sent him the report number and a photo of the card the social worker gave me. Then I sent him the quitclaim deed from the beach house, the one with my forged signature. Then I sent him the filing date. Peter didn't respond right away. A few minutes passed. Then he called back. His tone was different, not calming, focused. He asked if I was sure the signature wasn't mine. I told him I was. I told him I'd compared it to older documents. I told him when it was filed. I told him I hadn't been told about it. Peter swore under his breath. He said, "If they did this to you, they'll do it to me." That was it. That was the moment he stopped trying to smooth things over. He told me he'd been putting money into the family trust for years without asking questions. That he'd always assumed Valerie and Jack wouldn't cross certain lines. That calling authorities on your own kid was one of those lines. He asked me what I needed. I told him I needed help making sure they couldn't do this again. Not to me, not to Tucker. Peter said he'd talk to an attorney the next day. Someone independent. Someone who wasn't used by the family. He said he'd handle communication if it came to that. Before we hung up, he asked one more question. He asked if I thought the call came from Valerie or Jack. I told him I didn't know yet, but I had my guess. Peter said it didn't matter. What mattered was that they'd shown what they were willing to do when they lost control. That night, Tucker slept with his door open. He didn't ask. He just did it. I stayed up later than usual. I didn't send any messages. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't let Valerie know I knew. They thought they'd scared me. They didn't. They made it clear who they were. And now Peter saw it too. Jack emailed me on a Thursday morning. No greeting, no apology. Just an attachment and a sentence telling me to sign a correction document so the beach house title could be cleaned up. He framed it like a clerical issue. Something minor that needed my cooperation so everyone could move forward. The attachment was a revised deed. It kept my name off it. I didn't respond right away. I forwarded the email to Peter. He replied with one line. Do not sign anything. I waited until that afternoon, then replied to Jack. I attached the quitclaim deed they'd already filed, the one with my forged signature. I also attached a short note from a legal consultant Peter had connected me with, confirming the signature did not match my known records and would be treated as a fraudulent filing if pursued. I didn't threaten. I didn't raise my voice. I wrote that I was aware of the filing. I wrote that it had been reviewed. I wrote that I would not be signing anything to correct a document I never authorized in the first place. Then I gave them a choice. They could withdraw the filing, acknowledge the forgery, and agree to an immediate legal resolution regarding the beach house. A forced sale, a partition, something formal and documented. Or I could file a police report for forgery and add the false welfare check to it. That was the whole message. No emotional language. No accusations beyond what I could prove. I ended it by saying all future communication should go through counsel. Jack didn't reply. Valerie didn't reply. Sophie did. She called me less than an hour later. I almost didn't answer, but I wanted to hear it from her. She didn't start angry. She started panicked. She asked what I'd done. She said Jack was furious. She said Valerie was crying. She said I was blowing things up over nothing. I told her it wasn't nothing. That's when the tone changed. She stopped pretending. She told me she was in trouble. Real trouble. She said she'd been juggling credit cards and short-term loans for months. She said her divorce settlement didn't cover what she thought it would. She said she'd promised money she didn't actually have. She admitted she'd told someone she'd have access to beach house money by summer, either from a sale or rental income. She said it like it was obvious. Like of course that was the plan. She said she needed my name off the house, that Jack and Valerie were supposed to handle it, that I was never supposed to notice. She said, "You don't even use it." I told her that wasn't the point. She said she needed time. She asked me to let them fix it quietly. She said if I just signed the correction, everything would calm down and no one would get hurt. I told her no. She got angry then, said I was choosing pride over family, said I was punishing her kids, said I was overreacting. I told her she shouldn't have promised money that wasn't hers. She hung up. Within the hour, I contacted the property management company that handled the beach house rentals. I forwarded them documentation showing the title was in dispute and that any agreements relying on my consent were invalid until resolved. They replied quickly, professional, neutral. They froze all rental activity immediately and flagged the account as legally contested. No more income, no more plans. That's when Jack called Peter. Peter filled me in later. Jack accused me of sabotage, said I was trying to destroy the family, said Sophie was beside herself, said the beach house was the only thing keeping things afloat. Peter told him that forging a deed and calling authorities on a child crossed a line that didn't move back. Jack threatened lawyers. Peter reminded him lawyers would ask questions. Valerie left me a voicemail that night. She said she didn't understand why I was doing this. She said families don't solve problems this way. She said I was forcing their hand. She never said I was wrong about the deed. That told me enough. By the next day, the tone shifted again. Fewer accusations, more caution. Jack asked Peter what it would take to make this go away. Peter said it depended on how fast they were willing to accept consequences. Sophie sent me another message. This one was shorter. She asked if I knew what would happen to her if the house sold. I didn't answer. Valerie emailed asking if we could all meet and talk. I didn't respond. They finally understood what they were exposed to. This wasn't about leverage anymore. It wasn't about guilt or pressure or pretending something was a misunderstanding. They'd put themselves in a position where someone outside the family could step in and make decisions for them. All I'd done was stop playing along. By the end of the week, Peter told me they were asking about timelines for a sale. Not demanding. Asking. The beach house wasn't a symbol anymore. It was a problem they needed gone. And for the first time since Thanksgiving, they weren't acting like they were in control. Valerie went public the next morning. It wasn't direct. She didn't name names. She posted one of those long, careful messages about family and gratitude, and how hard it is when children forget who sacrificed for them. She talked about values, respect, loyalty. She said she was praying for clarity. She added photos, old ones, holidays from years back, group shots of grandkids around the table, Sophie's kids front and center in every frame. Tucker wasn't in any of them. I forwarded the link to Peter so he'd see what was happening. By that afternoon, my phone started lighting up. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Some asked what was going on. Some told me I was being unfair. A few said Valerie was heartbroken and that I should just apologize so everyone could move on. I didn't respond. Not to her, not to anyone. Peter didn't either. That was important. We did not correct the story. We just let it build. Valerie posted again that evening. Another vague message about teaching gratitude to children and how discipline gets mistaken for cruelty these days. More photos. Still no Tucker. Sophie commented with hearts and prayer hands. Jack stayed quiet online, but he was busy behind the scenes. Peter told me Jack had called him twice that day, angry at first, then pleading. Jack said the family was turning on them, that things were getting out of hand. Peter told him they were already out of hand. The next day, another cousin messaged me directly and said Valerie told everyone I was keeping Tucker away to punish her, that I'd gone nuclear over discipline, that I was trying to take money from the family. I didn't reply. Instead, Peter and I agreed it was time to end the guessing. There was a family group chat that included most of the extended family. It had been quiet since Thanksgiving. Peter asked if I was okay with him posting something there. I told him yes. He posted one thing, a screenshot. It was from the copy of the welfare check report I had requested. Not the whole document. Just the part at the top that listed the originating phone number. Valerie's number. Clear as day. No commentary. No explanation. Just the screenshot. The chat went silent. No typing bubbles. No reactions. Nothing. 10 minutes later, Peter got a call from Jack. Jack didn't yell this time. He sounded scared. He asked Peter to take the screenshot down. He said people were misinterpreting it. He said Valerie never meant for it to go that far. Peter told him it had already gone that far. Jack tried to pivot. He said families don't solve problems in public. That night, Valerie deleted her posts. The damage was already done. The next day, Jack's tone changed completely. He stopped accusing. He started negotiating. He asked what it would take to close this chapter. Our Peter told him the only way forward was to resolve the beach house issue cleanly and quickly. Jack asked if that meant selling. Peter said yes. Within a week, paperwork started moving. Not aggressively. Carefully. The kind of careful people get when they realize lawyers and police reports are no longer theoretical. The beach house went on the market quietly. No announcement. No listing shared with family. Valerie stopped posting altogether. The sale moved faster than anyone expected. They priced it to move. They needed it gone. When it closed, the effect was immediate. The beach house had been more than a property. It was their buffer, their fallback, their way to keep cash flowing without touching retirement accounts. Losing it meant everything tightened. Peter told me Jack admitted they couldn't keep helping Sophie anymore, that they'd already stretched themselves too far, that the sale proceeds were spoken for covering other things. Sophie did not take that well. She called Valerie screaming. She called Jack, accusing them of ruining everything. She said they promised her access. She said they told her it was handled. She said she'd already committed money she didn't have. She turned on them fast. According to Peter, she said this whole thing was their fault, that if they'd just kept control of me, none of this would have happened, that they'd scared me when they should have leaned on me. Valerie cried. Jack got angry. Sophie stopped answering their calls after that. By the end of the month, Sophie wasn't speaking to anyone. The extended family stopped messaging me. A few sent quiet apologies. Most just disappeared. No one asked me to explain anymore. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. But there was something else under it. Relief. The noise was gone. No more posts. No more pressure. No more attempts to reframe what happened. They finally understood that pushing further would only make things worse for them. They'd crossed too many lines. And they knew it. That was scorched earth. Not because I burned anything down, but because there was nothing left for them to use against me. The beach house sold in early spring. There wasn't a family announcement. No group email. No bittersweet post from Valerie about closing a chapter. It just happened. Paperwork moved, signatures got notarized, and the property was gone. Peter handled most of the communication. I didn't speak to Jack or Valerie during the process. I didn't need to. The deal was simple. Sell, split what was owed to each owner, and stop trying to play games with the title. When the sale finalized, my portion hit my account a few days later. Because I was the only kid on the title, the split was simple. My share and theirs. Peter had never wanted his name on the deed, and Sophie had never put a cent in. Only expectations. I didn't celebrate. I didn't buy anything. I didn't tell anyone outside Peter. I set up a protected trust for Tucker. Not the kind of family trust my parents used like a leash. Something basic and locked down. It was for Tucker's future. School. A first car. Whatever he ends up needing. It couldn't be touched by anyone else, and it didn't depend on me being on good terms with anybody. That money was the last thread I had tied to them. Once it moved into something clean, it stopped being about them. Sophie didn't take the sale well. At first, she tried to keep acting like she was still aligned with Valerie and Jack. She'd show up to their house, bring the kids, let Valerie play grandparent of the year in front of them. But when the beach house money didn't turn into a rescue plan for Sophie, the tone changed fast. Peter heard it more than I did. Sophie started calling them bitter, calling them selfish, saying they ruined her life. She said they promised she'd be okay, and then pulled the rug out. She said they should have controlled me better, like I was a dog that got loose. Eventually, she stopped coming around. Her kids still wanted to see Valerie and Jack, but Sophie wouldn't bring them. Valerie tried to guilt her. Jack tried to throw blame around. It didn't work. Sophie was done once the support stopped. Whatever family loyalty she had was tied directly to how much they paid. So Valerie and Jack were left alone. Not fully alone, I guess. They had neighbors, church friends, people they smiled at, but the house got quieter. Peter said Valerie started calling him just to talk about nothing. Jack would cut in to steer the conversation toward money, toward fairness, toward how things should have gone. Peter didn't give them anything. He kept things short. He didn't fight. He didn't argue. He just stopped being available. That was the part I didn't expect. Peter always used to take the middle path. He was the guy who made excuses so holidays could happen. He stopped doing that. Months went by without any contact from my parents to me directly. No apology, no acknowledgement, no attempt to fix it without controlling it. Then Tucker's birthday came around. Not a call, not a message, not even a card with a real note. A plain envelope showed up in my mailbox with Jack's handwriting on it. Inside was a check. Small amount. Like a test. Like they were trying to see if I'd break the silence for a number that didn't matter. There was no happy birthday, Tucker. No, we miss you. Just the check and a short line written on a scrap of paper that said something like, "Tell him we love him." I stared at it for a minute. It wasn't about the money. It was about access. If I cashed it, they'd say I accepted them back into the picture. If I didn't cash it, they'd tell people I was keeping Tucker from his grandparents over a birthday gift. I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't explain. I wrote return to sender across the front of the envelope and put it back in the mailbox. Tucker never saw it. Life stayed quiet after that. No welfare checks, no weird paperwork, no cousins asking if I hated my parents, no Valerie posts about gratitude, no Jack threats, nothing. That's what I wanted. By the time Thanksgiving rolled around again, it wasn't even a debate. Tucker didn't ask about going to Valerie and Jack's house. He didn't mention the cheesecake. He didn't mention the envelopes. He didn't bring up his cousins. Peter invited us over at first, then changed it and said, "Actually, come to your place. We'll keep it simple." So we did. It was just me, Tucker, Peter, Peter's wife, and their kids. No big table settings. No forced family photo. No rules about who sits where. Everyone brought something small. Tucker helped in the kitchen without being corrected every 10 seconds. Peter's kids ran around being kids, and nobody acted like it was a crime. I made cranberry sauce the same way Tucker liked it. I let him handle most of it, with me watching so he didn't burn himself. He was careful, serious, focused. He tasted it and added a little more sugar. He looked proud the way he did the year before. This time, nobody knocked it over. We ate dinner in my living room because the dining table wasn't big enough. Paper plates, normal food, kids talking too loud, adults talking over them sometimes. Nothing polished, nothing tense. After we ate, Tucker carried the cranberry sauce bowl to the coffee table. He tripped a little on the rug, and a thick blob slid out of the spoon and landed right on the table. He froze. Full freeze. Shoulders up. Eyes wide. Like he was waiting for Valerie's voice to snap at him. Like he was waiting for someone to decide he didn't earn being there. I saw his face change in real time. That scared look. Peter noticed too. His wife stopped moving for a second. The room went quiet, but not in a bad way. Just everyone seeing the same thing. I didn't say, "It's fine," in that fake calm voice adults use when they're actually annoyed. I laughed. Not at him. Just a real laugh. I grabbed a napkin, scooped the cranberry sauce off the table, and ate it. Tucker blinked like he didn't understand what just happened. Then he let out this shaky little breath and smiled. Not a polite smile. A real one. Peter's kid laughed and said, "Ew!" And everyone laughed again. Tucker laughed too. That was it. No punishment, no lecture, no shaming, no lesson, just a kid making a mess and adults acting normal about it. Later, when everyone was leaving, Peter clapped me on the shoulder and said, "This is how it's supposed to feel." I knew what he meant. A year ago, my son stood there holding an empty envelope and being told he didn't earn dessert. Now he was at home, surrounded by people who didn't measure love with money or control. Just peace. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come